Now we're going to be talking about signed numbers. Signed number, for example, would be -2, +4. These are signed numbers. First of all, we're going to be talking about adding signed numbers. When I add signed numbers, there are two simple rules. Rule number one says this: if they are the same sign, so if they are both negative or both positive, then I'm going to add the absolute values and I'm going to use the sign that both have. So for example, if I have -2 plus -3, these have the same sign, they are both negative. I'm going to add 2 plus 3, the absolute value of those, that equals 5. They are negative, so my answer is also going to be -5. If I have +5 plus +6, they're the same sign. I'm going to add, that equals 11. The sign they have is positive, so my answer is +11. What about if they have different signs? Well, if they have the same sign, I'm going to add the absolute values, use that sign. Number two, the second rule, is if they have different signs. For example, one is negative, one is positive. I'm going to subtract smaller minus, the bigger minus the smaller, and I'm going to use the sign of the number with the largest absolute value. So for example, if I have -5 plus +2, notice that they are different signs. I have a negative and a positive. I'm going to subtract 5 minus 2 equals 3. 5 has a larger absolute, -5 has a larger absolute value. -5 is negative, so my answer is going to be -3. Let's say I have +6 and -2. Again, notice I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract 6 minus 2 is 4. 6 has a larger absolute value. 6 is positive, so my answer is +4. This is how we add or subtract signed numbers. For multiplying or dividing signed numbers, there is a different rule. The rule is simply this. First step, if the signs are the same, the answer will always be positive. So, if I have -2 times -3, that is going to be +6. If I have +2 times +3, that will also be +6. So if the signs are the same and I'm multiplying or dividing, the answer will always be positive. We can do this with division as well. If I have -8 divided by -4, the signs are the same, my answer will be +2. So if the signs are the same and I'm multiplying or dividing, the answer will always, every single time, be positive. If the signs are different, then the answer will always be negative. So if I'm multiplying or dividing and the signs are different, the answer will always be negative. So if I have -2 times +3, the answer will be -6. If I have +5 times -3, the answer will be -15. If I have +10 divided by -2, the answer will be -5. Anytime the signs are different and I'm multiplying or dividing, the answer will always be negative every single time. So if the signs are the same and I'm multiplying or dividing, the answer is positive. If the signs are different, the answer is negative. What about if I have multiple signs in front of a number? For example, if I have negative, negative 2. Or if I have positive, negative, positive 3. Anytime you have multiple signs in front of a number, you simply follow this rule. You count the negative signs. Do not worry about how many positives, only about how many negative signs there are. If there is an even number of negative signs, the answer will always be positive. If there is an odd number of negative signs, the answer will always be negative. So for example, here we have in front of the 2, 1, 2 negatives. That's an even number, therefore this will be positive 2. Here we have 2 positives, but it does not matter how many positives we have. All we need to look at is the number of negatives we have. The number of positives does not affect the ultimate sign. I see I only have 1 negative, which is an odd number, so the answer to this would be negative 3. This also works when I am multiplying or dividing several different numbers at the same time. For example, if I have negative 2 times positive 3 times negative 1, if I'm multiplying more than 2 numbers, I count up how many negatives I have. The number of positives, again, does not matter. Here I have 2 negatives, so my final answer, since that is an even number of negatives, will be positive. I simply multiply 2 times 3 is 6, times 1 is 6, so my answer would be positive 6. If I have negative 4 times negative 5 times negative 6 times positive 2, I have 1, 2, 3 negatives. Positives do not factor in. 3 negatives is an odd number, so my answer is going to be negative, and I can simply multiply the other numbers out. 4 times 5 is 20, 20 times 6 is 120, 120 times 2 is 240. So it would be negative 240. So, a review of sign numbers. If I am adding, if you have the same sign, you add and use that sign. If I have different signs, I'm going to subtract and use the sign from the bigger value. If I have the bigger absolute value. If I'm multiplying or dividing, if I have the same sign, 2 numbers, the answer will be positive. Different sign, the answer will be negative. If I have multiple signs, or if I'm multiplying multiple numbers, I count only the negatives, not the positives. If it's an even number of negatives, my answer will be positive. If it's an odd number of negatives, my answer will be negative. So these are the rules for using signed numbers in math.